All right, so my name is Liana. Thank you for joining us today. I work in community engagement here at THPRD. I will be your facilitator for this meeting. I will also be supported by a co-facilitator. That's Peter Swinton. Peter is a planner with THPRD. Thank you, Peter. Feel free to pop on camera and wave hi so everybody knows who you are.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you for your support, Peter. Just to our stakeholder participants today, your participation in this meeting is critical to improving our understanding of your needs and concerns as we move forward through this project, as well as initiating an ongoing conversation with both our stakeholders and community members to really develop this project in a way that supports you all. We also want to acknowledge any community members who are joining us, whether that's live at this moment or if that's on YouTube later. We're excited to share this project and we look forward to continuing to hear your input as we move forward. Before we start our agenda today, I'd like to take a moment to share about our facilitation process and what to expect. First, I want to say that if any moment my internet were to break out or you couldn't hear me, I want to invite you to type in the chat to let me know so I can field that for you. We are recording this meeting today. The intent is to share the meeting with our community so that they can learn about the project and ask questions. During this meeting, we invite our stakeholders to turn on your video if you feel comfortable. It helps us remember that there are people in this virtual room and that we're all connected over the conversation. I will ask, however, that you mute your microphone while you are not talking, simply to reduce background noise. So if you haven't done that already, please feel free to take a moment to do that. For questions and comments during this meeting, we will pause after each topic on the agenda, and I will announce an opportunity for questions and comments on each topic. To share questions and comments, I recommend using in the center of your interface. And then what I'll do is call on everybody in the order of those raised hands. I will try to address any immediate questions that are follow-up questions as soon as possible. And I'll be balancing the order of raised hands to ensure everybody gets a moment to speak or share a question or comment. We will ask that anybody who is sharing a question or comment to try your best to keep it to 1 to 2 minutes, just so there's an opportunity for everyone to share. Alternatively, if you prefer, you're welcome to type comments or questions in the chat bar, and I will be bringing those forward into the conversation as they arise. We will end promptly at 3:30 p.m. to respect everyone's time. However, if you have questions or comments that arise after this meeting, we welcome you to email those to us, and we'll be happy to respond. I would also finally like to just acknowledge that we're all human, and if we need to take care of any human needs, step away to take care of personal needs at any time, please feel welcome to do that. The only thing I might ask is that you just add in the chat that you're stepping away for a minute and you'll be right back. That way we know whether you're present and whether it's appropriate to call on you or not. For the agenda today, we'll jump into some very brief introductions. We'll jump into a presentation, including a project overview and timeline. Again, we'll pause for questions after each topic. And then we'll jump into our next steps for the project and answer or address any final comments or questions that come up. So what I would like to do right now is I would like to ask our stakeholders to take one moment to introduce themselves by entering your name, your position or role, whether that's an engineer or a private landowner, and also enter your organization, if you're representing one today, into the chat bar. And you'll notice if you open the chat, the little bubble in the center of your screen in the interface, you will find that I've dropped those in the chat just as a reminder. So please now take a moment to enter your name, position, and your organization in the chat to introduce yourself into the meeting. All right, looks like we have Scott Richmond. Scott is our team project manager with Jacobs. Thank you, Scott. We have Joel Feldman, transportation supervisor with the Beaverton School District. We have Robbie Combs, a consultant team for the bridge engineer with Jacobs. Janine Rustad here with THPRD, a planning manager. Leah Vietos Lewis, who's our Safe Routes to School coordinator for Beaverton School District. Todd Jones with PGE, and line design engineer. Shelly O'Lear, who works in bicycle and pedestrian coordinator with Washington County. Sharon DeLeo, consultant team trail design with tool design. And of course, Tim Bonin, senior park planner with THPRD. I want to check back in with Sharon DeLeo. Did I say your last name correctly?
It's Dalio, but
Dalio, thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, and then we have Blaine as well, senior facilities manager with Columbia Sportswear. All right. As anybody else enters the meeting, I will be happy to announce them and let everybody know that they're here. Thank you, everyone. I'd also like to very officially introduce our presenters for today. That's Janine Rustad, our THPRD planning manager, who's the project manager on this project, as well as Scott Richmond, our consultant project manager with Jacobs on this project. I'll let them continue to introduce themselves as they take the virtual floor. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Janine Rustad, who will be presenting the project overview. Janine, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Liana, and I'm glad you did all those introductions, so that'll shorten what I have to say. Again, I'm the planning manager for THPRD and also the project manager on this for the district. I'm trying to juggle screens, so bear with me. Just as a brief overview, this project is a study of the preliminary design of the West Side Trail Bridge. Our study area is between Southwest Greenbrier to the south and Northwest Cornell Road to the north. So we're catching both the bridge as well as the approaches. Much of the West Side Trail has been constructed through the district. To the south, the north, we still have some to go. There is one segment left to the south that's between 158th and Walker and the Southern Bridge Landing. We are coordinating with the county to try and get an alternative study to examine where that could fit into this landscape, with the hope that we would have both of these projects ready for construction at the same time. Of course, this is just a preliminary concept design, more on that. The West Side Trail, once completed, will be a 25-mile trail between the Tualatin River near King City and the Willamette River in Portland's northwest industrial neighborhood. This bridge is a crucial connection not only for that active transportation corridor, but locally as a connection between businesses, residents, recreation, retail, and transit. So this is a very important and exciting project for us. One of the reasons we wanted to undertake this preliminary design is once this location had been selected through Metro's master planning as the crossing, we knew we had challenges, and this aerial shows a bit of that we have multiple power lines, BPA and PGE. There's a gas transmission line, we have wetlands, a stream, a highway, and grade. So I liked it when our consultant at our kickoff meeting called it threading the needle, and as Scott and his team walk through, you'll see how true this is. So just for the last of my introduction, a little bit about what we are doing with this study and what it is not. So right now, this is, again, a preliminary design, and our goal is to identify other challenges than I've named so that we can take this, get a preliminary alignment, a preliminary design, and get enough certainty on costs that we can pursue funding for this bridge. This phase of the project will go through September 2021, and then our hope is within 3 to 5 years of that be in design, construction, design, engineering, and construction. So we are committed to seeing this happen. So I can either answer any questions about what we're trying to accomplish or turn it over to Scott.
Yeah, why don't we take a moment? Did anybody have any questions about anything Janine has talked about so far? We'll just leave a moment.
Can you go back to that previous slide for a second?
Yes.
Also, are you going to provide this document to the people on the call?
Absolutely, we can. Liana, you'll help me with that as the keeper of the emails. Thank you.
I'll be happy to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns before we move forward?
One more, just because this does go through the Columbia Sportswear. Is the width of the yellow swath that you have, is that the width of the trail, or
No,
that's just?
sorry, I should have said that with the location. It is the BPA corridor. And then Scott, you can explain a little bit about the dog leg over here.
Yeah, why don't I do that now since you have this slide up? So is that Blaine, I think?
Yeah.
That question? Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, quickly, just let me thank you, Blaine, for providing us access that we needed for geotechnical investigation, the use of your parking lot. So appreciate you being on this.
Good.
And providing that access a couple of weeks ago, whenever that was. So yes, as Janine mentioned, this this light shaded orange area is is largely BPA right of way. So I think that's 100 feet or so in width, and then that that dogleg area across Highway 26, and then including some of the Oregon Department of Transportation right of way, plus a little bit of sort of the edges of a couple of the industrial properties was surveyed. So as you can see, that we did a topographic survey, and that was to have sufficient information to guide our preliminary design work. And as Janine mentioned, this threading the needle challenge, we have got a lot of constraints. So in terms of early on, before we had the survey and had a more detailed sense of the context and the constraints out there, we were looking at potential bridge alignments and recognizing that the orientation of the BPA right of way, which is pretty much due north-south, relative to Highway 26, which runs at an angle, considering that we would want to maybe look at bridge alignment that would be more perpendicular to Highway 26. So that's why we recommended this potential impact area that expands out a little bit. And later in this presentation, we'll talk about the preliminary alignment that we are looking at, that we've really sort of tried to optimize given the constraints.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question there.
It does.
Great.
Anyone else with a question? I will advance, and Scott, if you want to take over and just let me know when you need me to advance slides.
Sure. Yeah. So before I get into some of the baseline environmental conditions, the context that we've studied and provided some of the reports to THPRD for review, wanted to just take a step back, and part of what we recommended and included in our work was we utilized company that Jacob subscribes to. I would call them sort of a data mining company for specifically related to transportation. They're called Streetlight. So we utilize streetlight information to get a better understanding of the travel in the area, and I should say a combination of streetlight and metro travel demand model information, which breaks out information by zone, so population and employment, and is overlaid with some more detailed demographic information. And so between the metro information and streetlight, we were able to gain a little bit better understanding of sort of this potential service area for a new bicycle pedestrian bridge, which would be roughly halfway between the Highway 26 interchanges with Cornell and Murray. So Cornell to the west and Murray to the east. And what we, there's a few sort of highlights here that we feature on this slide, which is one that people traveling in this area generally have lower incomes than those of the county as a whole. And then the streetlight data allows a lot of different information to be gleaned. So this includes trip origins, destinations, travel time and distance, average trip volumes or number of trips by zone and TAZ, and that's transportation analysis zones, which is what Metro uses. It also allows to disaggregate by time of day and days a week. And the image on this slide shows that for streetlight, the dark red outlined zones we use to really try to distinguish between the number and types of trips between those different zones. So Janine, probably go to the next one. You can go to the next slide. So there are trips in the area made by walking and bicycling. So people do use active transportation, but very few of these trips cross Highway 26. By far, most of the trips that cross Highway 26 are by motorized vehicle. But we did find that a lot of those trips are within a 3-mile distance, which really makes those trips conducive to people getting out of their cars and getting onto their bicycles or walking for generally shorter trips. And we also looked at, and we have a more detailed presentation, so this is just a couple slides from those. But motor vehicle travel to and from THPRD's primary recreation center complex and Sunset High School and that area around there, that demand across Highway 26 really shows a big opportunity for shifting modes, and a new bridge could provide a much more direct route for some of those trips. And the new facility could benefit individuals of lower incomes and communities of color, some of whom may not have access to a vehicle and may, under the current infrastructure, be deterred from walking or bicycling. But with a new bridge, there's a major potential benefit there. And I'll just add one more thing about streetlight, that Streetlight was so excited about our use of them for this project that if you go to their website, they have a number of case studies, and they feature this project as one of their case studies. So you can go to the next slide. So before I get into existing baseline conditions, or any questions about the sort of the travel patterns and potential benefits from a use standpoint? Okay, you can go to the next slide, Janine. So part of our work is we're not getting into the point of the project there where we go through gathering permits and going through National Environmental Policy Act or NEPA, but we're setting this up and we're trying to understand what, if any, approvals will be needed. So part of the context is land use, and this is showing the current zoning designations. And one of the, and sorry if it's a little hard to read, but this shows the dashed line jurisdictions. So the city of Beaverton sort of surrounds, and part of Beaverton is part of the study area, I should say, is within the city of Beaverton, but most of it is within unincorporated Washington County, sort of right near Beaverton. So there's two major jurisdictions who are stakeholders here. The primary uses and zoning is for industrial and office industrial, and then there is some quite a bit of residential surrounding the corridor. And again, it's primarily we're looking at the Bonneville Power Administration BPA right-of-way we've been coordinating, I should mention, with BPA on this project, and we'll continue to do that. You can go to the next one, Janine. One of the constraints that Janine mentioned on the north side of Highway 26 within the corridor is a relatively large wetland complex that takes up much of the area where really we would look at landing the bridge on the north side of the highway. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's a little bit over an acre within the corridor area. And there's also Clean Water Services requires a 50-foot buffer around the wetland. So for their approval, we will be coordinating with Clean Water Services about what will need to be required to offset any impacts to the wetland. This map also shows that there is a pipe for the water that drains under Highway 26. It's a culvert that the flow is from north to south. You can go to the next one. So we did a wetland, we delineated the wetlands. We also had a plant survey, a botanical survey. Most of the plants out there are noxious and invasive weeds and marginal habitat for special status plants. So this shows different types of the wetlands, two different types of wetland areas, forested and emergent, and herbaceous, which our botanist discovered is mostly weeds, and then urban landscaping around some of the private parcels.
Thank you,
Looks
Scott.
like there's a question.
Pause. Yeah, I want to pause just for a moment. It looks like Blaine has a question. Blaine, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. So I deal with that wetlands all the time. They do have clogging issues with the culvert that goes underneath the freeway all the time, and it does back up in that whole area and pretty much just makes it kind of swampland. So just a note about that area.
Thank you, Blaine. So I'm not sure if we have anyone from ODOT in this call, but that's a good point. We did have, I'll add that we had a site visit back in February of this year when we could all, before we were all sheltering in place. We had a site visit with a team that included a couple of people from ODOT, including one of their environmental specialists, and he made the point that this is an area that could be a good candidate for some restoration, habitat restoration. Absolutely. So there may be opportunity there with that.
Yeah, because you can see up up towards the top right, we have a large gravel parking lot up there, and it actually backs up down to the right just a little bit.
Just to the right of the red there.
Yeah, just to the right of the red and down to the bigger block. Yeah. That area, that whole block there, it backs up so far, it goes about halfway, well, maybe a third of the way up into that parking lot when we have stormy weather. So.
All right.
Just a note, just wanted to give you guys that information.
Yeah, thanks, Blaine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Janine, you can go to the next one. So for the one of the findings, which we considered good news from protected species and habitat standpoint, is that there are no federal or state Endangered Species Act listed species or designated critical habitat present in the area. We do have the stream that I mentioned earlier, which is an unnamed perennial tributary to Willow Creek. And then, not surprisingly, based on what Blaine, you were just saying, that the Highway 26 appears to be a complete barrier to fish passage. So it's a relatively small pipe or culvert under the highway. It
is very small, and they do have stone filter that they have caged in. It's a fence with a bunch of boulders on the inside of it, and everything gets blocked up there. And I've got to have teams go in and clean it out all the time.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you. All right. I think you can go to the next one, Janine. So we also have a historian who did some research, and historic properties are those for this point in the process where we're a ways out from getting funding to go forward and into construction. And so we are looking at historic properties are essentially those that are 50 years or older, and usually in planning processes we look at properties that are 45 years or older. And so there are five properties that include the BPA and PGE transmission lines. So the BPA major line is on the east side of their right of way, and the PGE line is on the west side. Those are both historic pieces of infrastructure. There's also the highway itself, which is older than 50 years. The Oaks apartment complex, which is just west of the BPA right of way and south of Cornell, and then the LifeWorks Northwest. And so going forward into the federal and state approvals process for this project, there may need to be state or National Historic Preservation Act determinations of eligibility for National Register of Historic Places for the two transmission lines. Todd, I don't know if you have any information on that for PGE or anything to add. And we don't have Jim Clark on, I don't think.
No, I don't have anything to add. I mean, we lease that line from BPA. I don't know if we maintain a historic status on it.
All right. Okay, go to the next one, I think, Janine. Similarly, for cultural resources, we have an archaeologist who did some investigation. Database didn't show any sites. He did a couple of shovel pits to look for any artifacts, and there were none found. So our archaeologists recommended no further study required for archaeology. You can go to the next one. Yeah, so before we get into preliminary design concepts, we also had an investigation of any sites of hazardous materials concern, and there were none that were too close to the study area. So none included, that would be likely to be impacted. So that was good news as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, were there any questions on those previous slides before I get into the preliminary design concept info? All right, go to the next one. So by the way, I'm the project manager, but I'm not an engineer and I'm not an expert on this, but I do have as backup if I miss anything, or if there's Q&A that I need help from Robbie, our bridge lead, or Sharon, our trail design lead. So this is showing a little bit of the challenges horizontally and vertically. The utilities desire a 25 feet distance from the towers, the horizontal distance from any vertical structure, and we know that's going to be a challenge. We also need to be a safe distance vertically from the actual electrical transmission lines themselves. So as we like to say, this is threading the needle. And so you can go to the next one, Janine. Yeah, and this is showing a bird's eye view of the north part. So we're talking about, and we'll show on a plan and profile view, the challenge of bridging the wetlands area or having a structure over that wetlands area, and there's some grade challenges too that we know we need to have the trail meet the grade at Columbia Way, and it's a relatively short distance to be able to achieve the acceptable grades for Americans with Disabilities Act that we know we'll need to get. So we'll talk more about that, but this is showing that we're going to need to come down to grade at Columbia Way. And the next one just shows a different, next slide just shows a different view of that. So this shows looking north, some of that wetlands area, Columbia Way, where that text is right where that road is, and where we need to meet the grade there. So you can go to the next one, Janine. So this slide, hopefully you can see it pretty well. The top is showing a plan view, and the bottom is showing a profile view. And these are preliminary concepts. I should add that the profile view is exaggerated. So those horizontal lines, the vertical distance between those is representing 5 feet. So if you're looking at that from the side, the bridge would not really be, and the existing topography is really not that exaggerated, but that's illustrating how the lay of the land is and what we need to do, how much clearance we need over Highway 26. So we tried to orient the plan view and the profile view. So the circled number 1 is showing the location of the bridge structure over Highway 26 itself. And on the profile, that blue line is showing the actual bridge structure and where the deck could be. And we'll talk a little bit more about bridge types, and I'll probably invite Robbie to add more detail. But this profile view is really what we consider a relatively conservative estimate at using a bridge type that would have more of the structure underneath the deck. And so the deck would need to be up a little bit higher. We've had some conversations with Janine and Tim with THPRD about a likely preferred type that we'll get into. But for the alignment itself, the challenge is, as I mentioned earlier, in keeping an adequate distance from the utility towers, the electrical towers, which are shown on the plan view in red, and then also trying to come up with an acceptable landing location, which is particularly challenging on the north side of the highway. And when we were out there, for example, with our geotechnical expert, really pinned down a pretty small postage stamp area that could be feasible for landing, having abutments on the north side of the highway. And you can see in the plan view that there's some curve added, and that's due to the limited distance between for coming down to grade at Columbia Way. So that's shown, that's illustrated both on the plan view between numbers 1 and 3, where we show the need for a ramp, which would be up on structure, and then leveling out more to come back to grade at Columbia Way with some boardwalk type structure, again, to minimize the amount of fill within the wet area, the wetland. Sharon, Robbie, anything to add, specifics about these?
No, nothing specific here on my end. I think you touched on everything we needed to in terms of the structural items here and why we are sitting up a little bit so high with the vertical exaggeration.
Yep, I agree. Nothing for me either, unless anybody has questions.
Yeah, and I would just add that we originally anticipated going through maybe some different alignment options, and while our I would say our vertical profile will change a lot, I don't expect that our horizontal, the plan view, will change that much. We've made an attempt to sort of optimize this alignment primarily due to the constraints around the utility, the electrical towers. So are there any questions about this? Again, it's very preliminary. Okay, go to the next one. So I'll probably invite Robbie to chime in here, but I'll cover this. Go ahead to the next one, Janine. So just first of all, some basics about the geometry of the site. So Robbie and his team determined that 2 spans are likely most feasible, and those would be, each span would be about 125 feet long with a sporting column or a bent in the median of Highway 26, as occurs with many other structures that cross over Highway 26. So there's room in the median there between the eastbound and westbound lanes. The width would be, the trail width, I should say, is 12 feet. And for the bridge width itself, which allows a little bit of structure and fencing along the outside, would be a total of 14 feet wide, and estimated 3,500 square feet for the bridge area. That's just the area of the actual structure between the abutments on each side. The minimum clearance, ODOT's standard vertical clearance is 17 feet 4 inches. We are coordinating with ODOT about that. They may want to run this through the Motor Vehicle Advisory Committee. So that we wouldn't complete that process, but we want to make sure that we don't have any fatal flaws from a design standpoint here. And then Robbie had noted that these span lengths of 125 feet are fairly typical, and so many bridge types could fit this site. You can go to the next one. So in talking with Janine and Tim about different bridge types, and we went, Robbie had walked them through several different options. We have tentatively landed on prefabricated truss type being potentially optimal, and mostly it's for those pros reasons there listed off to the side. Predominantly that the deck superstructure allows for a shallower path or profile, and so in other words, the deck for people walking, riding bicycles could be closer to the highway, could be lower versus other structures, or other bridge types where the structure, more of the structure is underneath the walking or riding surface. And so the photo or the image just shows one example of a type. There are other advantages or considerations that material-wise or aesthetically, it could be concrete or wood, or it could use wood for the rub rails and to bring in a natural element. We've had some expression of interest potentially for having more of a natural look to the bridge that would go along aesthetically with some of the THPRD's other structures along other sections of the trail. Cost-wise, the prefab steel truss for the structure itself, sort of in the mid-range of bridge types, and we think that overall project cost-wise, any higher costs of the bridge itself could be offset by reducing the amount of grade at the approaches and the amount of structure associated with the grade at the approaches. So there's a little more info on this slide. Robbie, did you want to add anything, or anyone else?
Sure, I'll add just a couple things. I mean, you touched a little bit on aesthetics. There's various different types of railing applications that can be put in here. The bridge itself could be a weathering steel, or it could be a painted steel, depending on aesthetic guidance. Concrete supports underneath the bridge can get They can be bare concrete, they could be stamped, stained concrete, or you can do stonework veneer over the face of it as well to get more of a natural aesthetic to it. So there's quite a few options here, and we're leaning on the prefabricated truss as opposed to a custom site-built truss, specifically because costs for a prefabricated truss are significantly lower than a custom truss. We could go with a single span potentially. The site warrants it, but a single span would require a custom fabricated truss, and the cost is significantly more than $350 a square foot, as we show here in this slide. So that's all I really have to add.
Yeah, and I would only add that a custom truss, that reminds me that a little bit east of this project site, the TriMet Sunset Transit Center's bridge, bicycle pedestrian bridge, that I like to call the upside down bridge because of the upside down arches on it. That's a customized steel truss bridge, as an example. Right? So that's it for these the design concept part, if there are any questions. If not, I think we're on to next steps.
All right. That's me, Liana, as community engagement. So for next steps, we will be focusing on community outreach. We're inviting community members to a virtual meeting on Tuesday, October 20th. That is specially for community members to learn about the project, ask questions, share input. And we will also be offering a public survey to collect input and community comments, which will be open from October 5th to November 22nd. You will find more information, and community members can also find more information at the project webpage, which you will notice I've dropped in the chat there if you'd like to access that. At that site, you can also sign up for project updates if you haven't already. So any news about the project that would be publicly announced, we also email out. So feel free to sign up for that as well. Any questions about next steps or community outreach?
This is Todd Jones with PG. Do you know when you'll have better drawings that we could use to start checking clearances? Because that will go underneath two of our lines.
Scott or Janine?
I would say, Scott, do you want to take that?
Yeah, and I might turn to Robbie and Sharon as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have detailed survey, Todd, that includes the the vertical, the towers and the lines themselves. And so I would think, and we'll have more information at the next stakeholder meeting. We'll devote more of that time to talk in more detail about the design, and we'll have a little bit more detailed visual to show of that. But maybe we take an action item to follow up offline, Todd, with you and BPA, Jim Clark with BPA, about the clearance that we're showing based on the preliminary concept that we have.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good.
What other questions might have come up, whether that's about next steps or anything else in the presentation that anybody would like to ask? Oh, looks like we have a question from Shelley or a comment. Shelley, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was, so what what's the grade then of that ramp that you have coming down in order to meet at the Columbia parking lot?
So what we're showing in there right now is as on both sides of the bridge itself over 26, we've got short segments that are in between, I think, about 6.5% and 7.5%, based on the guidelines that allow for a short distance of that. We will need to work in a landing area. And then after we come out of those, it flattens out to a little under 2% on the south side and a little under 3% on the north side as it approaches the Columbia Way crossing.
Okay.
And I guess I should add in here too, we are sitting up a little bit high right now because the profile we're running has the bridge deck supported from beneath. If we make edits to show the bridge deck as being supported from above with a through truss type system, that'll bring our profile down and that'll change our grades a little bit. It'll reduce them.
Yeah, it'll help the situation.
Yeah, thank you. I guess this is a regional trail, and so I am wondering whether 12 feet is going to be sufficient, and especially if there's a grade on it where you might have really slow moving people biking, families biking, or people walking up a grade that may be going slower. And if you have it narrower, is there going to be enough room for people to pass slower moving? Because this is going to be equally a recreation and transportation function for this bridge. So we want to make sure we're accommodating both comfortably in this. So I'm wondering, I'm just throwing it out there, is whether or not 12 feet is really going to be sufficient, or are we going to need it to be 14 feet?
So I'll start with that our trails functional plan for regional trails, and Tim, if I get anything wrong, please jump in, is 12 feet with 2-foot shoulders. So this will match the other portions of the trail where we're able to build to our standards.
So I guess you're probably poking in a little bit too at the bridge slide where we said 12 foot out to out width. That's for the main span over Highway 26. We would be looking at having a 12-foot clear span just across Highway 26. With the ramp structure, we could widen back out. There are some shipping limitations that we have to kind of stick to with prefabricated trusses if we go that route. Once you get above 14 feet out to out width, it gets pretty hard to truck those trusses to job sites. So we do have to be a little bit cognizant of that too, but we can work around it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, any other comments or questions?
I have one more comment, and I may have missed it, but also through that utility path, there is a high pressure gas line. I think it's 22-inch, maybe 40-inch. It's big. We had to work around when we put the parking lot lights in there. So that's my comment. And then just when we get to, I think, a more detailed plan, we do have parking that goes through behind Toso, underneath the power lines. So there might be maybe some opportunity to move to one side of that parking area or not. But then we don't know what we're going to look like coming out of COVID. So will I need that parking? I don't know. So.
Yes, it's a changing world, and I like to say the dust hasn't settled because we haven't finished kicking it up yet.
Right, exactly. So.
Yeah, and Blaine, if you're talking about for the high pressure gas line, the Kinder Morgan line that runs along the east side, it runs north south, but on the east side of the BPA right of way, our surveyor has located that, and we're staying away from it. That's the intent, is to stay away from it.
Good.
Not be digging anywhere close to it.
That's a scary area. So.
All right. And Janine, I don't believe we have any more slides. Is that correct?
Just this one, but I do, we had opened up for public comment. We received one letter from Kevin O'Donnell. Kevin O'Donnell had served on Metro's West Side Trail Advisory Committee when Metro put together the master plan. And I'll just paraphrase what he said. He wanted to remind us that the location of the bridge here through the BPA corridor was a result of an alternatives analysis through the master planning. Of course, he's supporting this bridge. He's one of our trail advocates. He asked us to enter Metro's West Side Trail Master Plan Report number 4, the implementation strategy for this meeting. He noted that this section of the trail and the bridge in particularly is the highest rated near-term priority and is the most crucial section for the function of the regional trail, and that without this bridge, there is no long-range connection. And as we showed in the beginning, that this trail is the bridge is important, not only for the trail, but the short-term connectivity. So if there are no other questions for us, I'll give you a few seconds.
Yeah, any further questions or comments?
I do see that Maria has just joined us.
Yes, welcome, Maria. And I'll just remind everybody again that we are recording this meeting. And if you want to revisit this meeting at any time, you can do that by going to the project webpage and following the link to our YouTube channel, where you'll be able to watch the recording and hear that. If additional questions come up or comments come up at any time after this meeting, again, feel free to email those. We would love to have them, and we'll be happy to respond to you. Looks like Joel has a question or a comment. Please go ahead, Joel.
Sure. I just want to have a comment, add a comment. The Beaverton School District does have an interest in this path, or the bridge and related path. Part of my duties are to identify areas where there are hazardous conditions that might prevent students from walking to and from school. And currently, anything south of US 26 is deemed hazardous for Sunset High School students who'd like to walk to school, mainly because of our work with law enforcement, observing traffic on accessing US 26 on the on-ramps of either 158th and Cornell, or accessing on Murray Road at 26. And so the addition of this bridge would provide a pedestrian path for all of those students attending Sunset High School that reside south of US 26. So we're very excited to see this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. All right, thank you. I will leave a little bit of space for anyone else who has, before I turn it back over to Janine, anybody else who has any last questions or comments they'd like to share before we wrap up. All right, well, in that case, I think what I'll do is I'll turn it back over to Janine for any final comments and wrapping up. Janine, would you like to take the virtual floor again?
Sure, thank you. And it looks like we'll be able to give you back a little bit of your day. We do want to wrap up by thanking all of you for attending this afternoon. Our property and agency stakeholders and any community members who may be watching. We appreciate your time, your thoughtful comments, and your input is really meaningful to this project. We welcome you to contact us at any time, as we're happy to talk with you about any questions or concerns you may have that arise throughout the project. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you. And have a good day.
Thank you very much. You do the
Thanks.
same.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.